And magically, recording is in progress.
Good morning, Tim. Nice to meet
Yes,
you.
very nice to meet you too. And you're in Japan.
I'm in Japan, in Osaka right now. Yes,
I've not
that's
been
where I
to.
live. Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
I love Japan, but I've never lived there, but visited a few times.
I
And
saw that even on YouTube, there's Tim Freak Japan. You have a Japanese channel.
yes, I have a little tiny group of folks that I talk to in Japan, and I've been across and run events there. Took my daughter there actually when she was small, and we went round. It was lovely. So, how long have you been in Japan?
More than 30 years now. I came here in the early 90s.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And Muho, is that a Japanese name?
That's the name I received when I ordained in a Zen monastery about 30 years ago. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Mm.
Good. Good. So the thing that I've been doing this sort of series, and I thought it might be a good. I haven't done one for a while. A good
Yes.
place to start our conversation because we've been put together by somebody, a mutual friend, and
Yes.
said, "Oh, you two should talk," and we have, which is great. Which is a series called "What Is Life." And it was really my
What is
excuse
life?
to, yeah, it was
Mm.
just an excuse really to have a conversation with people I found really interesting, because
Yeah. Yeah.
that seems to me the question I wake up with every day, which is, oh, this is happening again. What the hell is it? And uh, I thought that might be a good place to start, and then we can go anywhere. So, what's your, either your personal approach, the Zen approach? What's your feeling about what this is we're in?
I mean, just as you said, there's this sense of wonder. What is life? When I was young, the question is, what's the meaning of life?
Right.
Like when I was 7, I lost my mother, and from that point on, there was this question: if this whole game is gonna end anyway, why should I do homework to get good grades? Why would I want to have a job and earn money if I'm gonna die? And even if I have children, they're all gonna die. Um, I didn't understand the meaning of it all. And now I would say, well, there is no meaning to life, but that's beautiful. Thank God, thank Buddha, there's no meaning to life, because if there was a meaning to life, it would be just doing your homework. It wouldn't be fun anymore. So for me now, if you asked me for the meaning of life, I would say there's no meaning in life. That's why I enjoy life. But if the question is, what is life? Well, obviously what is happening now is my life, but as you said, you wake up every morning and there's this, wow, I don't know why. At least in my case, I don't know where I returned from. Where was I at night when I wasn't dreaming? Um, but there it is again, and I don't know what it is. But when I was young, it tormented me. I don't know why. Why was I born? How could my parents be so stupid to have unsafe sex? Why had it be? Why does this have to be? And now I say I don't know why, but I enjoy it. It's quite nice. Although the Buddhists, of course, say life is suffering, but I made friends with suffering in a way. Yeah.
So how does that sit with all the people that aren't enjoying it in terms of how you see life?
Mm. I mean, I get that criticism, of course, also from the Buddhists that say, well, but the Buddha said life is suffering and it's not satisfactory. And of course, I get the point because for me, my life for so long felt like suffering. And if you ask me, are you satisfied all the time now, 24/7? Of course not. Of course not. But in a way, you could say I found my peace with suffering. So, and of course, I realized that I have it good here in Osaka. So the unsatisfactory of my life is a very luxurious form of unsatisfactoriness. I turn on the tap, there's water that I can drink, I have enough to eat, I'm protected from the rain. Um, but I'm convinced there's a path to this, how do you say, feeling at home here in this moment, even if you have only a minimum. Like 20 years ago, I was living in a park in a tent for 6 months. I had the plan to live there for several years. It turned out that my teacher in the monastery then died, and I was called back into the monastery. I became his successor, but I had the feeling that the homeless people living there in the park in Osaka, they were quite at peace with their um, situation. And of course, there's many people out there in the world for whom it's even worse. If we think about the kids in Gaza right now, if we think about the Ukraine, of course, I wouldn't tell them, "Oh, it's fine, it's just fine." But I think in 99% of the cases, what we call suffering is something that we create by our idea. It's not supposed to be that way. And of course, I don't want to pretend that there's this 1% where actually we should do something about it to relieve the suffering. But I think in most cases, when we talk about suffering or not being satisfied, it's something that we create, and there's a way out of that. There's a way out of that.
Okay. So you said a phrase. I'm not. I don't want to just pick you up on silly things, Muho. That's not my purpose. But just because I'm interested, you said it's not supposed to be that way. Supposed by whom?
Hmm. Of course, you got a point there. You got a point there. I mean, it is the way it is. It's just that there's the danger. It is the way it is. Therefore, it's good the way it is. And I wouldn't make this extension.
Yeah, I
The
completely hear what you're saying.
world
Yeah,
is exactly the way it is. And when I said it's not supposed to be that, I mean, you got a point when you say, well, who has this idea it's supposed to be that? But then there's this other danger of saying, well, it couldn't be any better way. Like, for example, in
yes.
Germany, there was this philosopher with the name of Leibniz. Even if there's so many things in the world that seem to be wrong, actually, God created the world in the best way possible. Just because it is this way, I wouldn't say it's okay, but also, of course, it's strange to say it's not supposed to be that way. It's not bad. It's
So you asked in our when we were connected
yes.
to what it was I was up to, and the reason I have ended up moving away from the kind of more perennial philosophy or Buddhist perspective and stuff that I've written on in the past is that sense in which the experiences that I've had in my little journey have made me feel like it's not that definitely it's life is not one way, that it's
Mm-hmm.
changing all the time, well, impermanent but changing, and that it's evolving, and that this incredible story which science has developed for us of the evolving universe, the whole the revelation 100 years ago that it really looks like what we're in is something which has evolved from the most basic beginnings you can imagine, and then now we're here, and that's an incredible vision that's what we're in. We're in this process
Mm-hmm.
that's unfolding on more, and a sense in which the what I would call deep awake experiences that in my life have pushed me towards is that there's that human life is significant
Mm-hmm.
beyond avoiding suffering or beyond enjoying the moment. That those are really good things, and hurrah, and reaching out for others and huge. but that actually what we're in is significant,
mm,
and that
mm,
what
mm,
we are is significant, and that because we are that process conscious of itself, and able to, we are that process happening at the leading edge of 14 billion years, and that there's something I find about the older traditions now, nearly all of them, which are inherently, I would say, I don't want to use an emotive word, but kind of negative.
mhm,
They're
mhm,
usually like there's some mistake, we've fallen into an illusion, we need to escape and get back, perhaps, or the self, particularly, is not really there. And
mm,
if we can just get back to this place we were before, or we can escape our humanity, our all this stuff which causes us to suffer, our attachments, all of that, rather than that. And what's happened is a kind of switch has moved around for me and gone, no, 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 that's where it's all led to. It's all led to this funny, these two bald-headed guys, one from England and one from Germany, who've found themselves alive, don't know what it is, and done
mm,
their best to live it and experience it, and that's that sort of sense of significance.
mm. What would you say is the mistake in Buddhism? You talked about these mistakes in all of the old religions.
Okay, so I'm aware that Buddhism is a very, very big thing.
Mm,
And it's very easy to just go, well, this is Buddhism, and obviously that's not true. It's vast. And let me say for a start off that I think all of the my take would be that fundamentally these are all traditions which have developed at the leading edge at a certain time in history.
mm, mm, mm,
And so the big another sort of transition moment for me 20 years ago or something was when I thought, oh, I need to not I need to do what the people I admire did, or do my best to. And the people I
mm,
admire are the people that moved it on, which is why I still know their names, because they moved it on. And so my problem with all of the traditions, including Buddhism, is that it speaks to a past time, in my view. So the big thing it lacks is an evolutionary understanding of the universe. So and how could it have
mm,
that? Because that's really only just arrived. But once you've got that, then that turns it around. And there's the idea. I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion. You can help me with this, maybe, because I think there can be a misunderstanding, perhaps, of what the whole no self is about. One of the things I struggle with, because I mean, obviously the Neo Advaita thing has really taken off in the West, and that's different. But that the self that's being denied is probably a self I would also deny. The idea of the Atman, the permanent sense
mm,
of some divine spark or anything, doesn't make any sense to me either. But the sense that the individual is the apex of the evolutionary process, and that it's through the individual that these states which people have been exploring, lots in Buddhism, of coming into what I would call communion, oneness, transcendent of the normal states of consciousness, are hugely significant. It's just that we need to understand them now in a new context, because our psychology and then hopefully our spirituality is has evolved. Does that begin to open up that a little bit? I'm sensing not.
mm. So basically, for you, the point is the teaching of no self, because
No,
for you, the
that's one.
sense of self is
That,
important, or the
well,
individual.
I come across
Mm,
I mean, like I said, I've come across lots of different Buddhisms. So
yes,
there's a certain Buddhism which is like just be in the moment Buddhism,
mm, yes,
which I think is inadequate to the mystery. I think
yes.
there's a Buddhism which goes, it's all in consciousness, a kind of idealist Buddhism. I don't think it is
Mm,
all now, all in consciousness.
mm,
There's a denial of the actual human self and the
mm,
human attachments, emotions. I think that's wrong. I think that is our humanity is absolutely central to where we're going. so those are things I come across in the Buddhist community, which I find myself, and things which I've taken on myself in the past that I've now find
Mm,
myself
mm,
going, I'm
mm,
not sure about that's right, you know. I think we might need to turn that on its head.
mm.
But there's also some really good things, which is that I
Yes,
think
yes.
the states which are being explored are really important. I find a certain thing in the Buddhist community sometimes that it's about experiencing the emptiness.
Mm, mm,
And I love that. I respect that. And I do think we could call the ground empty. I think that's a good name for it. There's a one, for me, I would say the ground is an undifferentiated oneness. Well, if it's undifferentiated, it's empty, but that it's become differentiated into everything.
mm,
And
mm,
to
mm,
me, it's the fullness, which is the thing I want to commune with. I don't want to commune with the emptiness, which is just boring. I'm interested in the fullness that it's arisen as everything, and particularly that it's
mm,
arisen as
mm,
you, because
mm,
you're the leading edge of that process. So when I commune with your psyche, that's where it feels like things get really, really interesting.
mm,
And
mm,
it's the
mm,
individuality of Muho that attracts me,
mm, mm, mm,
not some removal of that individuality. However, I
mm,
think that when we connect in that way, we start to move on to another level of the evolutionary process, what I call the unividual, an individual conscious of that unity.
mm, mm.
And for me, that's the same thing that the early Buddhists were exploring, I suspect, but through a 21st century lens, just like you might in medicine go, well, it's the same thing which the early doctors were exploring, but now we've got all of this new information and we've moved it on, and that more like that.
Mhm, mhm. Um, I'm not quite sure how if I understand it right. And one thing that I don't quite understand is this idea of an evolving, what is it, consciousness?
No, I would
Um,
say that what's evolving is well, the differentiation of oneness, which is information. And what I find fascinating about physics is it's come down at the moment to going, oh, look, the primal thing we need to understand is information, which is pretty
mm, mm,
interesting, I think, something we understand with maths. But that information has become you and me, a very,
yes,
very
yes, yes.
emergent form. And I'm not a reductionist, so I'm not going, oh, we're really just information. No, we're really this. And it's fucking amazing.
Mm,
But what's evolving, it
mm,
seems to me, is, well, if the universe is a process,
yes,
then I'm a process because I'm part of the universe and so are you. So,
yes,
and a process is kind of made of its past because it's an unfolding of something.
yeah, yeah.
And what I'm exploring, Muho, would be
Mm,
the past hasn't gone anywhere. This is my problem with just being in the moment. It's like the past is present. That this
mm,
moment
mm, mm,
contains us
mm,
connecting. It contains you moving to Japan. It contains you as a little boy with your mum and all of that, and way back, and then the evolution of humanity and the Big Bang, and
mm, mm,
all of that is informing this. So my sense is what's evolving
mm,
is these individuating systems, these
yes.
individuating systems, which are, that sounds so cold, but I'm not trying to deny the warmth of our humanity, which is which are which is the one in relationship with itself as everything, including you and me.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that's what's evolving, I think.
Could you give me a rough sketch of this evolution? To me, it sounds like, well, originally we were all one, but this oneness split into individuals, and right now this oneness meets here as Tim and Muho. But we're evolving, and then does this mean that these individuals that we are right now will become unividuals and become one again? So is it oneness splitting into many and then returning to the one again, or how should I imagine that?
That's a great question, and very similar to what I did explore in my earlier books. I see it slightly differently now.
Hmm,
That so when I say that it starts as one,
hmm,
I mean literally as banal as what we mean by the number one. No qualities, nothing, emptiness. So undifferentiated. So we are not all one. There's no we, there's no nothing, there's no intentionality, there's no meaning, there's nothing. There's something which can become anything, which is in the process of becoming this, and who knows what else, but this. So that what's happening is that the evolutionary process, which has come through information and then matter and then life and then psyche, this non-material domain that you and I are having the conversation in, of the soul, that's what's evolved, and that through and the most fundamental level of information is, well, the bit in computer terms, this or that, which is duality. So that undifferentiated oneness in duality will become everything, and including the duality of me as a system and the universe, and you as the human being, as human system and the universe, and that we're not returning to the oneness. It's like it's a whole new thing. It's like here, and my sense with that is that a bit like has happened throughout the whole process of individual systems have become an individual enough that they can unite into something greater. So like my body really, fascinates me, that there could be trillions and trillions of individual cells. And for most of biological evolution, that's all there was, just individual cells. But they've managed to combine to form something as complicated as the human body. And that what's happening, I wonder, is that the new level, the soul level, the psyche, is also beginning to come into a type of communion and form a super system, a super organism, which is what we experience in those sublime deep awake states. And that's why it's such a, well, I would describe it as this enormous love and this sense of being part of something greater, not because we've got back to anywhere, but because something absolutely new is arising in that 14 billion year process.
When you had this talk with Cosima, you were using this metaphor of the two hands, the right hand and the left hand. And in the case of our body, well, they are connected. We
Yes.
don't feel our left hand and the right hand separately, but usually when we interact in our daily lives, my consciousness isn't your consciousness. I have no idea what you had for breakfast.
Absolutely.
So there's this sense of separateness, but I think with the metaphor you try to explain that, well, maybe it's just like, for example, the right hand only thinking it's separate from the left hand. But now I got it wrong, or?
No, you got the metaphor right, but it was probably a clumsy metaphor. So there's two ways. So there's the old way I would have seen it. I don't know how that relates to, which would have been, really we're all one, but we think we're just the hand, and then you realize, no, we're everything. So that's and that's not what I'm saying. So if I gave that impression, I apologize. What I probably meant, I can't remember, but what I probably meant by the metaphor is, look, once you, it's not that I'm not going to suddenly know what you had for breakfast, but there is a level of communion which we can experience, whereby we form something greater together, and the state in which I recognize my identity is not what I took it to be. So I'm not this skin bag, as Alan Watts put it. I'm more than that, and I am the universe in relationship with itself. I just am. Look, I'm always in relationship with the universe. I'm never ever just Tim, ever. It's always in relationship. So I'm a relationship. So I'm a process, and I'm a relationship. So I'm the one in relationship to itself in this process, but as Tim. So I'm the one as Tim. I'm not really the one or anything like that. I'm really the one as Tim in relationship to everything else. And if I get that, there's quite a big shift, and I come into this greater communion, this what I would call the individual. So more like that. And it's not like we suddenly realize there's something behind the scenes. There's something in I'm not sure if you have it in Buddhism or not. I don't think I've come across it in Buddhism, but I hear it a lot in modern oneness spirituality, which is that idea that really there's a great mind or God or consciousness, whatever that is, behind the scenes, and you're all kind of puppets. And it's like, and you realize you're a puppet. Oh, I'm just a puppet, and really we're all this thing, but not that. I feel like no, you're not. The human being is absolutely creative and wonderful. Did that make it any clearer? Because I don't want to confuse you with stuff.
To be honest, not really. Or
Okay.
I'm beginning to understand what you're not trying to say. I'm a relationship, or I'm related to everything. I'm connected to everything. Oneness is a relationship, or I'm a relationship in a relationship to oneness, but as Muho. So we're not all one, or we're all one, but also separate.
So a bit like I don't know. This metaphor
Yes.
will make things worse, but you know, you take a blank sheet of paper, and I draw me, and I draw you.
Yes.
We're both a blank sheet of paper,
Yes.
but you're this bit, and I'm this bit, and we're in
Yes.
relationship. And we can just think we're just the bits, but we can also go, oh yeah, but we're all the blank sheet of paper, aren't we? And everything is that. Everything is the being of everything,
Mm,
even
mm,
numbers. Anything which has form has been forming from one formless potentiality. So that there's a commonality with everything, which
mm, 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 mm,
is that is I think one of the key experiences which the early Buddhists, and well, not just the early ones, but the have been exploring,
mm, mm.
and I still think those are really, really important. But I just want to put it in an evolutionary context now.
I think I get the metaphor, but there's still the question, like you used the metaphor of the blank sheet of paper. Many people use the metaphor of the screen in the cinema also. So Tim and Muho are separate beings on the sheet of paper, but at the same time, I'm Muho and the blank sheet of paper. Tim is Tim and the blank sheet of paper, which would mean that in a way, Tim is Muho, but obviously Tim is not Muho, and Muho is not Tim.
I would say that you and I are one in the respect that, well, let's try it a different way. Try it a different way, because I'm not saying the screen of paper. That the screen is a favorite of people like Rupert Spira. And what they're saying is, look, there's a thing which is really what you are, which is consciousness, and then these things play out. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, look, and thanks for bearing with me, Muho, because I'm aware that I'll do my best to try and get this across. Is let's take the evolutionary picture. So if we let's use the scientific term for fun. It's the singularity. So everything has come from the singularity. So we're all the singularity. But that singularity has individuated into the universe, including Tim and Muho. So that one has become everything. So if you because we're processes, if we trace ourselves back far enough, yeah, we're the same. But here we're delightfully individual, and we share a lot in common, of course, because we've come from the mammal line, and then from the human line, and then from the Western human line, and all of that. And that's just on our biological level. I mean, the fact that you can mention Leibniz and I know who it is means we also share a certain or Zen, or so like that. So it's not like really with this or that's behind the scenes, or just like there's one thing which is morphing into everything, and it's meeting, and therefore on that level there's a level in which there's one of us, and then here we're absolutely beautifully individual. And then when we recognize the commonality of being, and this reminds me of Zen a lot. See, this is an area where with my exploration of Zen, I think this is something which I've kind of really taken on from it, is that sense of a commonality of being, and
Hmm.
being able to, and that when we recognize that, there's a shift, not back to anything, but onwards into something which hasn't been widely recognized before. And then when you see it, it's like, oh, right, okay. So my there's a, and then there's an intimacy. There's a deeper everything, actually, in terms of your relationship with the universe and everyone in it. Did I do any better? Maybe? No?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, how do you say? It's easy for me to just listen and then say I still don't understand, because if the, how do you say, the roles were the other way around, I would have to explain what you're trying to
But
explain.
we should do the roles the other way around and see how
Well,
that goes.
maybe I could say, I imagine there's many, how do you say, points of connection, but probably there's also some difference.
Yeah.
Um, in Buddhism, you often talk about absolute truth and relative truth. And when you talk about oneness, usually people call this the absolute truth. There's only one, uh, well, being, whatever. In the case of time, it would be the now. There's only one now. Which now? Well, this now. There's no other now. And the past also manifests in this now. It's not that the past wouldn't exist, but you won't find the past anywhere than in this now. Um, but from the relative perspective, this now, what I call now, is only one point in time in a long history, 13.8 billion years, and there's going to be a long future, and each point in time is a now, a singular now, and they have all the same right. But from the absolute point of time, there's standpoint, there's only one now, this now. There's not many. There can
What
be
do you
only
mean by the
one.
word absolute, Muho, in there?
Um, Maybe it's easier to explain the relative point of view. You probably develop this understanding at point when you're 3, 4, 5 years, when you learn to say I. Until then, probably there's only this one sense of there's no other I. You don't even have the idea that there's other people. And usually it takes even a couple of years more to understand that tomorrow is just another day, and that there's 365 days in the year. So you need to develop this sense of relative truth, that everybody has just the same, how do you say, right to claim that he's the center of the universe than you, and that every day in the year is just as now as this day. But the absolute truth, I would say, is what comes before that, and which is even true now, that but there is only one now. How can you think that there's 365 nowadays in the year? Or in the case of consciousness, there's 8 billion people on this planet, and each have a separate consciousness. But at the same time, what I call the absolute truth is there's only one consciousness right now. Which consciousness is that? For the person that maybe sees this in the future on YouTube, I would say it's that consciousness that listens to Tim and Muho in this moment. Of course, this idea of somebody watching this video later in the future is also only something that I have because
So
I'm able to.
what about right now with you and me? So I'm conscious of looking in your eyes. You're conscious of looking back. What about then?
There's only this one consciousness.
What does that mean, though, Muho? To say, because I mean, I'm not
Mm,
against,
mm,
I'm not. I mean, I've said it myself a million times, but I just don't
mm,
know what it means now. It's like I am conscious of looking at you. You're conscious of looking at me. So in what way is there one consciousness? And is there a consciousness as a like a it's like a
mm,
noun? Is there a noun,
mm,
or is Tim, who is a noun, is conscious of looking at you? It's an
mm.
activity. I'm conscious of you, and I'm conscious of whatever I focus on. So where's this noun consciousness come from, and why is there only one of them?
What did you say, man? Where's this
No,
man?
no. So this noun.
This
It looks
what?
to noun, thing,
Noun.
noun.
Ah, Noun.
Yes,
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 yes.
noun. And by the way, I just want to just say to you and how much I'm grateful that you're having this conversation in my language, and I really thank you for that
Mm.
because my German is rubbish, and I'm aware that you're speaking in a different language. So yeah, all right. So here's the question. I'll just repeat it so it's clear. Um, I'm conscious of looking at you. You're conscious of looking
Mm.
at me. That looks like two people are
Mm.
engaged in an activity, which is focusing and being conscious. Where does
Mm.
this noun consciousness fit into that? And how is there only one of them, one of it?
Mm.
Because it looks like
Mm.
two individual people
Yes.
are engaged in an activity.
Mm. I think the difficulty that I have, both in expressing myself and understanding you, is getting these two sides together. Right now, there's not a consciousness, Muho's consciousness, being conscious of Tim, but there's only one consciousness. But I wouldn't express myself the way I'm expressing if I wouldn't believe there's a consciousness over there. Of course, I believe in Tim's consciousness, whatever that means, because Tim's consciousness sounds like there's a consciousness and there's an owner of the consciousness. There's somebody to whom the consciousness belongs. But of course, there's no two separate things there. Probably there's only consciousness. But at the same time, consciousness, maybe it's the same in English. In German, it even sounds strange if you put it in plural. In German, you say Bewusstsein, but there's not really a plural to that. Consciousnesses sounds strange, although we believe there must be 8 billion human consciousnesses. But usually we talk about consciousness or that famous heart problem of consciousness,
I,
traumas.
do you think I want what maybe to make it clearer, you need to tell me what you mean by a consciousness or one
Yeah.
consciousness because I don't know what the noun means anymore. Do you mean the psyche? Do you mean the fact that we can have imaginary experience and all, is that what you mean, or is it the pure subject? This idea that there's a pure like Bernardo Kastrup or the Spira and those people, there's a kind of a presence which is somehow a
Mm.
pure subjectivity. Is it that, or is it the the mind or the imagination and the psyche? Is that what you mean? Because it gets used to mean both things. I'm trying to work out what it means as a noun because I might want to come back and go, I don't think that exists.
Mm. Well, for me, consciousness relates to your metaphor of the blank sheet of paper.
Right. Okay. Okay. So
And
that's
of course, well, if you ask me, well, what is it? It sounds like where on the blank sheet of paper can I find the sheet of paper? And of course, you can't find it anywhere on the sheet of paper. So,
so. Why do you call the blank sheet of paper the emptiness? I guess
mm,
the undifferentiated. How
yes,
does it have the quality of being conscious, and what is it conscious of?
you were asking for the noun, but now I'm wondering, what does the verb mean? Like being conscious. Basically, what we're talking about is this. How would you say? everything we have right now, the experience of this moment. Of course, when I say experience, you could again ask, is this a noun? Is it a verb? Um, what is happening right now? And if that wouldn't be happening, I think that was a metaphor that Sam Harris used some time like that. The lights would be off. If
Yes,
this wouldn't be here, the lights would be off.
but isn't the question, is that, to use this analogy that we've got at the moment, the blank sheet of paper, is that the formless ground that's somehow conscious, or is it that the formless ground has formed, has been informed by information and formed everything, and at a certain level of that, and it's all relational, and at every level each system is relating on a physical level, and then on biological levels, and then sensory, and then conscious sensory, which is focus sensation, and then imaginal. And we get, so in other words, that what we call consciousness, the fact that the lights are on, is a very emergent level of the 14 billion year process that's come after life, not the ground. That's a million, it's gonna, we shouldn't be using the word conscious for with knowledge, conscious. We shouldn't be using that for ages, certainly not the ground. The ground's empty. It's just one. So that's the big, that was the shift for me that has led me down this new path.
Yeah, I'm beginning to see where we differ. So I think you're saying that it took a long time for consciousness to actually develop, or for the ground to become conscious.
So
The
I'm saying
ground
that
itself is
consciousness,
not
yes,
consciousness.
yes, and that it becomes, and that consciousness is a very emergent level of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm conscious of this. There's a whole load of things I'm not conscious on. I'm taking in, like I'm not conscious. I wasn't conscious of my left foot. I don't expect you weren't, but now you are, because I've mentioned it. Because wherever you put your attention becomes conscious. Because consciousness is, like Carl Jung said, it's like a focused reading of information, whether it's inside yourself, inside your own system, or outside. It's relational. So what's been evolving the whole way through is relationships. And this is a relationship, and part of it is I'm taking in huge amounts of information, and some of it really matters, most of it doesn't, and what really matters I focus on and take in high definition, and that's what I call being conscious. It's an activity.
So for consciousness to develop, the ground has to split into many.
It doesn't. I don't know that I'd say it was split. Maybe it's okay to say split. It's just
Unfold.
yeah. It's being informed. It's differentiating, which is why you get,
Differentiating.
the further back you go, the simpler it gets, until you end up here with this immense complexity and richness, and on all these different levels, including conscious knowing with knowing. The system knows it exists. The rock doesn't know it exists, it seems to me, but I do, and plants do in a limited way. They've got something going on. Would you call that consciousness? It's like everything in evolution. It's a spectrum. But by the time you get to most animal life and us, you can see, oh yeah, look, it's got body awareness, because it needs to, move itself out of the way of predators, and I'm this, and I can hide under this rock, but not that one. And then it's going to get to us, where we're the psyche, the whole imaginal realm, where we spend our time. And we know
So the evolution would be a process of the ground becoming conscious of itself as one eventually.
I think that is a important thing that seems to be, I think, is beginning to unfold now. But it's not. I don't think it's like some intentionality that it's set out to do that. Or I don't think it has got anything. I think the process has led to, inevitably, to greater and greater emergent richness. And by emergent, I just mean the thing which comes next required what was there before. And now we've got that, there can be this. And that it's an inherently creative process. It repeats the past, but always in a new way. And that creativity, which we're exploring on the level of the psyche and ideas now, will lead it on to the next thing. And the next one of the next things in the area I'm interested in seems to be that shift in the way that the psyche understands itself, understands what it is, where it goes, oh, hang on, I'm I'm I, I'm the whole thing which has become Tim, and I'm meeting the whole thing which has become Muho, and there's a connectivity which I could have missed, and that kind of feels like love. That's what I think that deep love is. That.
Interesting, interesting. Um, I started to talk about this kind of what I say absolute and relative truth. On the relative level, we're all separate but connected, and what I call the absolute level, there is only one, the reality of this one consciousness or this one moment. And I personally, how do you say? I think these two contradict each other, but I personally feel there's no way to connect them. And what you're trying to do to me sounds like you're trying to connect them.
Yes.
Um,
Because I think they're one thing. It's the kind of, for me, part of the inspiration would be, samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara.
yes, yes.
That jump that happened, with the Mahayana tradition of going, oh, okay, look, so the emptiness is the form, or the forming, I would say, is
Yes.
better. The formless, the undifferentiated, is the forming. So this is it, and and the oneness is the individuality, and they sit together perfectly, actually. And the problem I have with the absolute and the relative, and I'm not saying you're doing this at all, but I did this, and I see it happen a lot, which is kind of like there's the relative, and it's fine, but then there's the absolute, and that's what it really is. And my feeling is it's like almost shifted around. It's like now it feels like, well, if the absolute is the undifferentiated, if that's what absolute means, undissolved, undifferentiated, it's like, yeah, there's the absolute, but it's risen as the relative, which is where all the action is, because it's become this. And that's why it's amazing, because I'm conscious of it, and I'm all the differences, and and that's a so now I see them as one thing, and I certainly don't think the undifferentiated is the important bit.
I agree that you could, how do you say, relate this famous phrase, formless emptiness, emptiness, form, emptiness being the absolute, the one, and form being the relative, the manifold. Where there might be a difference between you and me, I would say it's both at the same time. We're living in 100% samsara, but it's 100% nirvana at the same time. It's not that we're moving from samsara and those who got enlightened there already in nirvana. There are two sides of the same coin, but where there might be a difference is, for me, there seems to be no way to, how do you say, be just in the middle of the coin. Either you look at the side of samsara or you look at the side of nirvana. And it's not that one is better and the other is worse. You need to see them both. To live your life, you have to understand samsara. You have to have both feet grounded in samsara. But to be happy in this moment, you also have this sense of nirvana at the same time. You need them both, but...
So let me get this right. And sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Please finish what you were going to say, because I just wanted to ask you a question about a term. I've interrupted you now, so I will. So I was, the first half of what you said, I was going to go, oh, I think that too. which is that they both exist together. You know, it's not.
Mm.
I think. And then you said it's like a coin. You can only get one side or the other. And it seems to me, and this may be where we mean different things, and it might be the nirvana idea, the absolute idea where we're different. So for me, sitting here,
Mm-mm.
there's both. It's like it's one thing. It's all one thing as everything,
Mm-mm.
and they do coexist. And I can focus on one more than the other for sure, and I can withdraw into myself by cutting off everything else and going and move into emptiness. And then there's another state, which is the one I'm really interested in, which isn't the emptiness. It's the
Mm-mm.
next level of the fullness.
Mm-mm.
And that's where in the past I would have called it God. But I
Mm-mm.
don't, it's not a God who's at the beginning creating everything. It's the most emergent level of the process that the universe has flowered into something greater than me. But I get to be a part of that. So that's where I would go with, so that there's not just, it's not like, oh well, I'm getting back to the absolute emptiness. It's like not really that interested in that myself. Although it's there, it's moving, but the recognition of it helps me move into this more emergent level, which feels, well, divine, really.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm.
that's kind of different, but there's something's the same though. Something's the same.
Mm-mm. Like I was talking about the two sides of one coin. What is this coin? Well, it's life. Life is that coin. So both sides are always connected. But what you say to me sounds a little bit like one side of the coin evolving towards the other. Maybe
So
I
I'm not
just.
saying there's two sides to the
Mm,
coin. I think that's the key. I would
mm,
have done. I think I understand what you're saying, because I think I would have been, if we talked, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would have
mm,
been like, yeah. Uh, uh, So for what I would say now is, yeah, forget the coin.
mm,
There's a formless, that something that can form into anything. It's just
yes,
form,
yes.
and it's differentiated into this, and all the levels of that process are still here.
Mm, mm,
So there's my psyche, which is like the most emergent
mm,
level. There's my biology, that's still happening, the biological world. There's the
mm,
physical world. There's the
mm,
quantum world underneath that. There's the
mm,
purely informational underneath that. And underneath that, there's the formless emptiness. And it's all here because it's all emerged to this
mm,
level. And I
mm,
can put my attention on any of that. I can put it onto the psyche. I can put it onto biology. Through physics, I can reach right into the nature of matter. I can mathematics, information, and through meditation, I can go into the emptiness. And it's not there's two bits. It's like no, there's one thing just going. It's that it's just one thing differentiated, and you can go down back to, oh, there's the one thing, and there's all the differentiation, and one isn't absolute and relative. It's all just one thing.
and
Again,
mm,
one might be the wrong word to use there. It's one process, maybe.
before you said one might be the wrong word, I wanted to ask, what is this one thing that's
Okay, so
emerging
so
or
what I
evolving?
all I mean by one, again,
Yeah.
is the undifferentiated. Something because the differentiated is two, and the one is two. So the one is
Mm,
also differentiated, and the
mm.
two is everything. And
But
and
for the undifferentiated to emerge or to evolve, there must be something, some space or something in which it can evolve. So wouldn't that mean that there's something beyond the undifferentiated?
no, I don't think so. So I think we need to this is a tricky area now, but for me to communicate about. So please forgive me, but I'll do my best. See, I think what we've seen
Mm,
through physics is that if you drill down into the ontological basement, as one famous physicist called it, you reach a world of which really is information. The quantum world is
mm,
possibilities, information, waves, waveforms, they're numbers. That's how we understand it. Now, I'm not saying it's mathematics, but that's the language with which we can understand that primitive level of the universe. So if you come back down and down and down, what you're arriving at is something mathematical. So one really means for me one, and two is two, and that's the so that the it's going to emerge first, or it's emerge at the primitive levels are going to be mathematical relationships, which will then give birth to probability relationships, which will then give birth to physics. So I don't think we need to think of anything. I don't even, well, before wouldn't make any sense because on this level there's no time. So time is an emergent quality that's going to arrive with probability, which is part of maths. But the mathematical relationships are not, they're not temporal. You wouldn't go, yeah, how long did it take for the one to become two or the two become three? It's like, well, there's no time. It's like asking, does five like chocolate? It's like, the question makes no sense. So if once you've got the space and time are emerging through that process as well, then a lot of those questions just disappear.
But if there's no time, how can be there emerging or evolving?
Well, again, it's like if you can see that if you're looking at mathematics, I think you can see, well, you don't get a cube without a square and a square without a line and a line without a point. So that's emergence. That's an emergent relationship where you can have this because you've got this. So it's emerging, but it's not emerging in time. And that necessary relationships which are not emergent in time yet will become time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which what we call, what the words we use, but that idea of take a number and add one, that mathematical relationship is going to play out in time. The fact that you've got three-dimensional objects will play out as space. That all of those relationships, mathematical relationships, will echo through. They're the foundation, so you'll see them constantly come up, hence the Fibonacci sequence in my arm and spiral galaxies and all these sacred geometry. All of those things will be a natural outpouring of the fact that there's an informational, mathematical, it's a bit Pythagorean what I'm suggesting here, really, at the base of things.
Now I'm pretty sure I completely don't understand.
I'm aware that this bit in particular is tricky for folks, and whenever it is, I always think it's because I haven't learned how to say it, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably true. I haven't learned how to say it, but I'll give it one more quick stab, all right? Because I want to be respectful to you. What I'm suggesting is, look, it looks like from the perspective of science, it looks like we go down to information. And it looks like the language the only language we can start using is the language of mathematics. And the relationships with mathematics are, in a sense, emergent. Like I said, 3 because 2, 5 because 4, cube because of square, square because of line, blah, blah, blah. But it's not temporally emergent. It's not evolution as it will be later on. And so the idea is that the process we call the evolutionary emergence itself is evolving. And the way that you and I evolve is quite different from the ways that biological species evolved. We're evolving on a soul or psyche level now. It's a completely different thing. And that the natural selection, biology, was itself an evolution of the previous type of evolution, which allowed physics to come into being. There wasn't natural selection because there was no species, but something more primitive version of the same thing was happening, and then back and back and back, so that you go, so the fundamental, there's something is undifferentiated, an undifferentiatedness is differentiated, and that's to be understood first of all mathematically. Then from that, what part of mathematics is probability, and from that and probability is not necessary, it's contingent. You don't know, it could be this, could be that, and that's going to give rise to could be this, could be that universe, which is what we live in, and that's going to arrive first as probability, which is what you find in quantum physics, and then that's going to solidify into patterns that repeat but always slightly different, and that's going to give you physics, and then physics is going to become more complex and become species. Now you've got life and death, and with life and death you've got a different form of evolution. where it's all about the ones that can deal with life and death best, can avoid death, and that will move the species on. And then you're going to get psyche. And now I think it's moved on. And for me, and I as a Buddhist, I don't know whether you would take this on or not, but to me, the latest level of that is transmigration. It's that the psyche has evolved to survive the death of the body, and that it's evolving on that level now. That's so it's gone from mathematics to the transmigration, but it's one evolving spectrum of evolutionary emergence.
Let me just make sure what we are dealing with. From a scientific point of view, probably people would say, well, nobody really knows why the Big Bang happened, if it happened, what happened before, but if it happened, it was a huge mass of energy, it was matter expanding, and then after billions of years, for some reason, we had life, and then we had eventually gradually higher forms of consciousness. So we will start with matter, life, consciousness. What are we starting with in your system? Do we talk about matter when we talk about this one undifferentiated, or is it information? You use the term information.
Sorry, Muka.
Yeah.
So I think matter is. I think generally the view in physics would be like it's not materialist anymore. That matter is itself something which has arisen from deeper levels, and more people are talking about the emergence of space from entanglement on a lower level, and even the emergence of time. And so that's not to say that we don't know whether our Big Bang was the first Big Bang, or whether universes give birth to universes, and there's all sorts of possibilities. But talking ontologically, looking at the nature of reality as it gets simpler and simpler, that's where I think, for me, we come back to information, which is what we study.
Information.
Yeah.
Is there a simple definition of the word information?
Yeah, for me, it's the differentiation of the undifferentiated. Information is differentiation. That's what information is, which is why here, like, the level of differentiation is just so extraordinary. But in the early universe, it's not. And then you get that recurring sense of relationship, like you said, an explosion of energy. I love Stephen Hawking on that, where he's saying what's so interesting is that people think there's this thing called energy. And there's not. Energy is a relationship, and what's happening is that what happens is that with the Big Bang, there's an infinite amount of negative and positive energy. So energy pushing it out and energy pulling it in, which is which cancels it. Which is there. So there is no energy. It's just like there's no left and right. There's only this. There's only the relationship between them, and I find that absolutely fascinating. So you've got this same perennial idea, very Taoist, I think, that the Tao is yin and yang, and from that is coming everything, that interchange of relationship. And I mean, I find it fascinating that I can put energy into this cup. I just did, but no energy went in the cup. It's just got more potential energy because it's higher from the earth, and I had to transfer that because I had to use my energy to lift it up. But I haven't put any energy in the cup. I've just changed its relationship with the mass of the earth. And in that way, I love that physics is pointing towards something which I do think was in the mystical traditions way before, which is that it's relational. It's one thing in relationship with itself. So something like that is the way I would look at it. So yeah, like the Tao Te Ching. The one is two, the two becomes three, and the three has 10,000 things. It's like, it's that old idea.
But at the same time, I think you said there's no time. So usually we think about this evolution happening over the course of 13.8 billion years.
I do think time is absolutely essential. I think that, but I do think also that it looks likely to me that time, as time has a sense of this is happening quicker than something else, which is one of the meanings of time, is itself can only emerge when there's more than one system in relationship to other systems. So time itself is going to be an emergent quality, like space is an emergent quality. But the process of emergence can predate that. It's just hard to think about that in non-temporal ways. But like I said, if you think about it as mathematics, you can see it's not temporal. It's relational, but not temporal. So I do, but I don't. Please don't get me wrong. I think time is absolutely essential to understand that time exists and is real and is important, and that we would never have been able to meet up at the right time without it. But in different times, because you're on the other side of the world.
Different time zones. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, difficult. I never read any of your books, so maybe I should do that. I listened to some of your talks on YouTube, but it's difficult.
Okay, well, try
Difficult.
Soul Story if you want to.
That's the newest one.
It is. It's quite old now, but because I've spent a long time working this up into a new thing I haven't released yet. What I'm attempting to do, and I don't know, it'd be interesting to know actually from someone who's become part of a older tradition, how this sounds to you. But what motivates me is wanting to take the essence of actually all spiritual traditions I've studied and all the bits I love, and kind of weave them into an eclectic mix that can sit with our modern understanding in a non-contradictory way, and can return in mainstream culture, because it's obviously, spirituality is massive, but in mainstream intellectual culture can return a sense of these experiences, particularly the whatever you want to call them, deep awake, I call them, but those really moments are not just some weird thing that happens to the brain. They are actually really significant. That death is not the end, and we can make sense of that in a rational way, which is coherent with what we know about biology, and that life is significant, and that the project I'm working on is called Why Your Life Really Matters, because my sense, is when I go into those states throughout my life, that I just feel everyone's life really matters. It's not, and I just want to say that to everyone, and that this enormous love is there, which you can touch into, and that somehow we need to update spirituality. We need a post-scientific spirituality now, which means gathering in the best of everything, because we're an eclectic world now, and putting it through the shaking it down, getting rid of the bits that don't stand up, and then weaving together a new spirituality for the next generation to take it on from there.
Yeah, I have no kind of model of the universe, everything that could, how do you say, compete with what you just said. But without having read your books, it still sounds to me a little bit like if we were two kind of bacteria living in the colon of some huge dragon, discussing how the dragon looks like. On the other hand, I sympathize with what I got from you saying in the beginning of our talk, that right now we're at the, how do you say, at the forehead. It's right now the two of us discussing, thinking we understood something, or maybe thinking we don't understand it. So I don't want to make light of our ability to try to make sense of this, intellectualize it, trying to get our head around it, even though we know that we can't possibly get our head around it. So although in Zen it's often said you think too much, don't think about it. I'm one of these Zen people who say, well, we have a brain, let's use it. We have an intellect. Let's use this precious gift from the universe. On the other hand, oh, I also have this sense, of course we should use it, but I don't know, maybe I'm just too stupid to understand what you've been trying to explain, but somehow I have the idea it's, well, just as I said, two bacteria sitting in the colon of a huge dragon,
Well,
imagining.
it is a very, very big
Mm,
universe. It's
yeah.
very old, and the possibilities are endless. So look, for me, I wrote a book called The Mystery Experience many years ago, and that's my foundation. It's like this is the most enormous mystery, and then we give it our best guess. And I'm with you. It's like I love not thinking,
Mm-mm.
but I love thinking too.
Yes, yes, yes,
It's
yes,
like
yes.
and they're different things, and it's an
Yes,
activity
yes,
I can engage in. And what it
yes.
does is it allows me to reflect on how I am processing my life.
Mm, 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 mm,
And
mm,
if I don't do it, I
mm,
process my life anyway. I just don't see how I'm doing it. And part of that processing can be just to say, look, for now, just be in the moment. The sun's on my back, lovely. Those are the easy things to do. That's easy, isn't it? That's lovely. The
mm,
hard
mm.
thing is actually engage with the difficult process of one's life and death and illness and responsibility. And that's where it feels like, now I need to kick in with my understanding. And the better my understanding is, I don't really need it much for the sun on my back. Basic understanding will do. As long as I feel safe, I can go, yeah, it's great.
Mm, mm,
So, and or sitting with my eyes closed in meditation, as long as I'm safe, it's like, great. Uh,
mm.
but that's the easy bit. The hard bit is to engage with the evolutionary process. But that's also where the meaning is, to come back to the beginning of the conversation with your questions as a young man, which I had the same, but not through tragedy. Um, that lies in, that comes from the understanding. And what's blown me away on my 65 years of doing this crazy shit has been how much my understanding's changed. And that's exciting.
Mm, mm, mm. How much your understanding has changed.
Yeah.
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 Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and how that affects my experience.
Mm, mm,
So when I would have had when I've, well, I can do it now. If I come into it's all consciousness, just do it. If I take in the moment as it's all consciousness, everything's arising in consciousness, and I am really that presence, that subjective, pure conscious presence, and Tim is what I appear to be, but what I am is this. Then I'm very spacious, and everything is within me, but I'm kind of outside it, and it's happening inside me. And then if I switch that to what I'm employing now, which is there's one indifferent, the undifferentiated is differentiated as everything, including Tim. It's the same, except now I'm not outside. There's nothing outside. I'm
mm,
embedded within it. And my individuality isn't what I appear to be, it's what I am. But it's what I am because that being, which is everything, is being Tim. And I'm embedded within it. And it's the same but different. And that's what I see the way we understand does. It shifts it. And for me, it is better.
mm, mm, mm.
Both understanding and experience is better. So that's been my journey. And do you feel like so that with your understanding and your experience that you've that you've arrived at Zen and it's absolutely working for you, and or you meant, is it something which is, does it move a lot?
You mean my understanding of Zen?
And both understanding and experience, to me they come together.
Ah, the experience.
Both. And not your
Hmm.
understanding of Zen, but your understanding of existence through Zen, as it were, or as a Zen teacher.
Does it move a lot? Not so much, to be honest. Like if you asked me, how has it changed? How has it evolved during the last 20 years? I wouldn't say there's been any radical change. Although this feeling of mystery, so it's not that I grasped something and it's still the same from
Sure,
20
I can
years ago, but
absolutely see
it's
that.
still the sense of wonder
Yeah.
itself hasn't changed so much.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The sense of wonder hasn't changed so much. And the expression I would give to it, I mean, it has changed during the last 5 years or so. And that has to do with the influence of a Japanese philosopher, Hitoshi Nagai,
Oh,
from
you
whom I
mentioned
got
him.
lots of the. His
You,
name is Nagai.
I
Nagai.
looked
The
it. I
first
looked
name
him
is
up.
Hitoshi. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it you've gained from him?
Um, this idea that, well, the emptiness, which you could also say is actually fullness, it's not an emptiness of anything, it's fullness, is nothing else than the consciousness in this one moment. The
Okay.
consciousness that cannot be given a name.
Right.
It's, well, I say it's Muho's consciousness, or I think it's Muho's consciousness, or I could also say Muho is kind of the physical part of this consciousness, but actually the consciousness itself has no name, no gender,
Sure.
no nationality,
Sure.
and that is the manifestation of emptiness right here and now. And well, Nagai would say that's exactly what in Buddhism is called selflessness, because this, what we're talking about here, it has no essence. It exists right now, but there's no essence attached to it. And having no essence is what Nagai says is, well, non-substantiality, selflessness. But it is here, and in a way you could say it's the blank sheet of paper on which the universe appears. It's strange, but without that, the lights would be out. And well, I have the feeling that Nagai's terminology serves a lot to explain Buddhism, or at least my version of Buddhism. Of course, there's lots of Buddhists out there that would say that has nothing to do with Buddhism at all. Um, but even with Nagai, or I have the feeling it's not one picture. So there's these two sides.
Mm. Yeah.
The two
Yeah.
sides that we're all different, but then on the other side, there's only one.
It's
And
so similar to my early works. I mean, it's almost identical to, well, everything up till about 15 years ago.
mm,
Bit long. I mean, and the two sides. I developed this whole idea of thing I called paralogical, which was how two things, opposites, sit together. How we could both and was my phrase. I became, there was a point. There was one point, Muho, where I realized that it's not going to be true now. But I thought, oh, I'd always thought I was going to, maybe leave a book for posterity. Somebody would read it in the future, maybe. But I suddenly realized the thing that most people were picking up from me was a hand gesture. Because I can't know if I could do it. I go this, which would be, here's the absolute, here's the relative. And it's like, and they're both here now. And it was all about that two, the two are one, they're happening now. And you said it earlier when it said, and then the latest one has been, no, they really are one as
mm,
well.
mm,
And that
mm,
this process is what connects them. So when you said that consciousness, the gentleman whose name I can't remember, the philosopher was saying, for me now, that's exactly what I would have written. Well, I talked about my book, The Mystery Experience. That's in that book, exactly that. But I mean, maybe we should read my early books. You'll probably agree with those. The the thing I would say now is that
mm,
undifferentiatedness, which isn't conscious, it's not, it's on everything. It's unconscious
mm.
because it's on everything. It's just it's not anything. has differentiated into everything. And that when a system which has learned to be conscious in a biological way and then in a psychological way, and it then takes that focus and applies it to the undifferentiated, it is now conscious of it. Not that it is consciousness, but that when I apply it, so rather than, oh, really, I'm this, it's like, no, really, I'm Tim. But Tim can pay attention to that, and suddenly he's aware of it's all that huge, spacious thing, which is everything. So more, so it's kind of like flipping it around, but it's the same, but it's flipped around. So it's not conscious, but it's become this, which is then conscious of it. And that's the experience, rather. So,
But what
so no, you go, Muhu.
what we're talking about, this thing we're talking about right now, is also not only what we're talking about, but that is doing the talking right now. Or am I deluded here?
No, I think Muhu is doing the talking.
Mu is doing the talking.
Yeah,
And what we're talking about
the ground,
is something that's
the ground doesn't do anything. It's because it's undifferentiated, but it is differentiated as Muho. So the ground, which is differentiated as Muho, is talking to the ground as differentiated as Tim. And we have arrived at a sufficient level of evolutionary emergence that we have learned how to pay some attention to the ground, which is a pretty counterintuitive thing to do, because mostly animals have been aware of their survival. But we've got ourselves to the place where we've been able to ask huge metaphysical ontological questions, and it's led human beings to do all sorts of weird things, like going, so the universe is a universe, isn't it? I've been looking at all the separate bits. What happens if I look at the uni bit of the universe? What happens then? And then all these interesting things happen. And that's what I think a lot of the spiritual traditions have been about, or one part of them anyway.
And how do we know that we are paying attention to the ground and not just our idea of the ground? Like people
That's a
would.
great question. Great question. Yeah, how do we know that with anything? That's I think. Well, how do we know anything? I think there's a difference which we learn to discern. I think, but we can always be wrong. I mean, I think I'd be wrong about anything. So it seems to me that that what's happening with the psyche is like another sense. It's a sense in which I can sense things. I can see things I can't hear. I can hear things I can't see, and I can sense things like I can't see the oneness or hear it, but I can sense it. How do I know I'm doing that? It's ultimately something I have to decide for myself, like everything. I'm a system that has, what I regard as trustworthy or true. I have to decide for myself, and it's the way in which the experience impacts on me that does it for me. So if you say, let's think of another example. If I started hearing voices claiming they were sending me messages from the planet Zorg, I would be skeptical, and I'd want to be careful with that. But I might reach the point where it was like really I go, no, Mohu, I just am. And without knowing what that might mean, we'd have to work out that. And the same with this. It's like if I've done it enough. Now, of course, actually, what's happened to me, which I suspect has happened to you, I don't know, but what's happened to me is I walked into these deep awake states spontaneously when I was very young, and then interpreted them through the ideas I had, which were Christian. So it was like, oh, this is God. And then I went east in my teens, and then I started more and more interpreting them through Hindu and Indian Buddhist ideas. and the Sufi ideas and Taoist ideas and all of that sort of thing. And so then it's like, okay, so at the end of all of that, I've realized, oh, you can interpret this in a million ways. So I need to be very careful. I need to see, but the intensity of the experience, that's the thing for me. It's like, and that's why for me, this big love thing is is what really does it, not the emptiness. That's how I would say, I have to go with this. In the same way that, how do I know I love my wife? Well, it's hard to say how I know, but I do. And the same with these. It's like, I could be wrong, but I'm going to bet my life on this because of the
Mm.
richness of the experience. How do you know? How do you know the experiences that you're exploring in Zen practice?
Well, for me, it's more that when I'm speaking here, obviously it's Muho speaking, but it's the ground. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't use the word ground, but well, it's emptiness to use
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Buddhist term.
I'm not
There's
attached to
emptiness speaking, and at the same time, of course, it's this one person speaking. And how can I be sure about that? For me, it's like what in my mind Descartes realized when he had this famous realization, I think, therefore I am. And you asked this question with the noun. Well, who? Who's thinking there? Who thinks that he is? And some people think that that's what Descartes tried to say. There must be a thinker, and others make fun of that. But for me, Descartes' realization is whatever, if even everything else would be how do you say, a hallucination, the fact there's thinking going on here, there's doubting going on here, that's, I can't doubt. You can't doubt the fact that there's doubting going on here. So how do I know for sure that emptiness exists? Well, for me, emptiness is what's happening here right now. That's the only thing I can't possibly doubt. It would be like doubting that I have the feeling I'm talking to Tim right now.
So really, you're using the word emptiness there as consciousness again. Is that right?
In a way,
Saying I
consciousness.
can't doubt that
Yes.
I'm conscious.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with that. Um,
I
whether
can doubt that you're Tim. I could even doubt that I'm Muho. Maybe I only think I'm Muho, but I can't doubt that this is happening here right now.
okay, so I think we're talking about different things then,
Hmm.
because I thought you were asking about something else. I thought you were asking about how can, when I say, look, you can put your attention on the undifferentiated, let's say. I thought you were asking, how do you know you're doing that? Because I could be conscious and go, well, I'm definitely conscious, but am I definitely conscious of putting my attention on the undifferentiated? Or is that just kind of a little spiritual fantasy that I've got going and that I like, which a lot of people would obviously say. And for me, it's like, no, these states are so compelling to me that they have the same sort of compelling that I love my daughter. It's like, yeah, no, I don't care what you say. For me, I think I'm going to go with that's for real. And the same with paying attention to the undifferentiated, or more importantly, coming into the unividual communion, coming into God is the most biggest one for me. It's just like, I'm not, if I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong about everything, because that is the most beautiful, exquisite experience I ever have. And it feel, the feeling is always, it's more real, not, I don't know what that would possibly mean. It's a stupid thing to say really, but that's how it feels because it's more emergent. I think it just feels like, no, this is the most real. So that was what I was trying to answer, which is a different thing. So I'm aware, we've been talking for a while. It's been great. I loved meeting you. And And I don't know whether you were like it already, but you're very Japanese, and which is lovely. It's like you're at you have you know, I love talking to Japanese people, and there's something similar about it. Obviously, you're embedded in that culture. Is there anything, you know, when we set this conversation up, you wanted to ask me questions about things, and I wanted to get to know you. And is there anything which we haven't touched on that you want to grab this time to do, or do you feel like we've
Mm,
baffled each other enough?
I prefer to leave with this feeling of confusion. Of course, I could try to ask you stuff, but probably it wouldn't change a thing. So I'm quite happy with this.
I kind of feel
Um,
like, you know, as I'm talking to a Zen master, I should take off my shoe and put it on my head and go, I'm glad you're confused. At last.
yeah,
Or if you pour out the tea and you just, you know, or some strange stick, but I'm not going to do that.
I think we
Okay,
talked in 90 minutes. It was
it's
a
gone really
fast
fast.
90
We
minutes,
could speak for days, Muhu, I'm sure, because we've
and
got decades of exploration between us.
I have a huge question mark right now hanging over my head, but I'm quite happy with that. Quite happy with that.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Mm,
Well, my day's just beginning. Yours is coming to an end, and
yeah.
uh, it's been a delight to meet you and
My pleasure, my pleasure.
look in your
Maybe
eyes.
maybe there's gonna be a chance for some other talk sometime in the future, but
Yeah, yeah,
I have to do some studying, I think,
yeah.
before.
Well, we're connected now, and
Yeah.
that's lovely.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you to Cece, who are a mutual friend who connected us. So that's wonderful. Okay, my friend,
Thank you. Have a nice day.
and you.